Hi, I'm Dr. Dave. Welcome to my basement and welcome to the amazing world of high-speed video. On this DVD, you'll see all sorts of things in super slow motion.
You'll see basic billiard shots, advanced billiard shots, extremely stupid human tricks, extremely smart animal tricks, the physics of toys in action, fun experiments with food products, balloons popping and bouncing, stuff breaking and exploding, and much, much more.
And this is the equipment that makes it all possible. We have a high-speed video camera capable of filming at about 10,000 frames per second. I usually film at 1,000 frames per second, which is about 30 times faster than a normal video camera. We have two 500-watt halogen lamps, which provide enough light for the fast aperture time of the camera. We have a recording unit which records the video digitally, and we have a monitor for viewing the video. Well, before we get started, let's look at a couple of examples of how the equipment is used. First, let's look at an example of a pool shot. Have you ever wondered why sometimes when you hit a ball hard into a corner pocket, it rattles out and you miss the shot? Let's see if the camera can show us what's going on with that. Maybe you've seen this happen before. Now let's look at the shot in super slow motion using the high-speed camera. I currently have the system recording continuously. When I hit the trigger button after the shot, it will remember the last 2 seconds of video approximately. The first step is to turn on the high-intensity lights. You can see they're fairly bright. Now I can take the shot and then hit the trigger button after it's done.
The numbers at the bottom of the screen indicate the video frame rate, in this case 1,000 frames per second. The FWD text at the top left indicates how fast the clip is being played back, in this case 10 frames each second. So at 1,000 frames per second, 1/100th of a second elapses during each second of playback. This can also be seen in the countdown clock in the top right portion of the screen. Now we can see why we missed the shot as the ball picks up spin off the rail and rattles off the inner walls of the pocket. People often ask me, but where's the sound? Wouldn't it be cool to hear the sound in slow motion? Well, I admit that audio would make the clips more interesting, but it couldn't be the actual sound because speed is slowed down too much. For example, this is what the balls might sound like at a regular speed, and at 1/4 speed, and at 1/8 speed. At typical slow motion playback speed, this is what it might sound like. Did you hear anything? Well, if you did, you either have superhuman hearing or just a vivid imagination. You see, humans can't hear stuff in super slow motion. However, to satisfy people's natural urge to hear sound, I've added some artificial and sometimes silly sound effects throughout the DVD. Here's an example.
Well, let's get started. I hope you enjoy the remainder of the DVD. Thank you for watching.
The DVD is divided into many chapters. The running time for each is shown in the menu. If you get bored with any topic, just use the menu or the shuttle keys to move among the chapters. If you want to see more on a particular topic, you can also visit the website where you can find many more clips.
The first topic on the DVD is billiards. This is a passion of mine. I've filmed hundreds and hundreds of high-speed video clips to help better understand the physics and technique for different types of pool shots.
First, let's look at the Q-tip hitting the cue ball.
In pool, when you hit the cue ball in the center, you get good tip contact and the ball goes relatively straight.
Looking closer at the tip, we can see that the tip is in contact with the ball only for about 1/1000th of a second. This is the case with all tip hardnesses and for all stroke speeds and types. Also notice the chalk mark on the ball, which shows how much the tip flattens during contact. Here's a break cue with a synthetic phenolic tip. As you can see, these tips don't hold the chalk very well, so be sure to chalk up, and also be sure to vacuum that table every once in a while. Because the tip is in contact with the ball for such a short amount of time, there is really nothing the shooter can do to influence the shot while the tip is in contact with the ball. All that really matters is how fast the cue stick is moving at impact and where the tip hits the ball. Let's look how the grip hand responds when the cue tip hits the ball. Shown here is a classic pendulum stroke, where the upper arm remains stationary as the forearm pivots about the elbow. Notice how the stick moves in an arc. For consistency, it is important to strike the ball at the bottom of this arc. Notice how the hand flexes a little when the cue stick slows down after striking the ball.
Sometimes we hit the cue ball off-center to impart English or side spin, so the cue ball changes its direction off the rail.
Notice how much the cue stick deflects and vibrates after hitting the ball off-center.
If you hit the cue ball too far off-center, you get what's called a miscue, where the cue tip does not make good contact with the cue ball. When hitting an object ball, depending on where you hit the cue ball vertically, will dictate how the cue ball travels after impact. When you hit the cue ball in the center, such that the ball slides to the object ball, the cue ball will stop in place.
When the cue ball is farther away from the object ball, you need to hit the cue ball below center a little to result in a stop shot. Notice how the backspin wears off on the way to the object ball. The cue ball is said to have stun at impact. This technique is called a drag shot.
When you hit the cue ball above center, the cue ball will have topspin or forward roll, and when it hits the object ball, it will stop momentarily, but then continue rolling forward. This is called a follow shot.
Notice how the cue ball transfers all of its speed to the object ball and stops before the spin takes over. In this case, the cue ball follows the object ball into the pocket. This is something you normally want to avoid. This is called a rail dribble shot, where the follow action is counterintuitive to some people. One might think that if the cue ball follows the object ball, it will rebound off the rail with speed and bounce back. However, the spin is retained after rebound, causing the cue ball to head back to the rail.
When you hit the cue ball below center, it will have backspin or bottom spin, and when it hits the object ball again, it will stop momentarily, then it will roll backwards. This is called a draw shot.
Again, notice how the cue ball stops in place before the spin takes over, causing it to draw back. If you get a miscue, for example by hitting the cue ball too far below center, the result is an illegal scoop shot, where the cue ball can actually jump over obstacle balls. When shooting a ball into a corner pocket at fast speed, you need to be careful to not hit the rail before the pocket. We saw this earlier. Here's the shot at regular speed. In super slow motion, it is easy to see why the ball rattles out. When the ball hits the rail imparts clockwise left spin to the ball. When the ball hits the wall of the pocket, the spin makes the ball rebound back at a steeper angle. The wall also imparts counterclockwise right spin to the ball. When the ball hits the other wall of the pocket, the ball again rebounds at a steeper angle, sending the ball out of the pocket. When there is relative motion between the cue ball and object ball during impact, you need to understand and be able to account for throw and spin transfer effects. In this shot, the cue ball is hit with left English, giving it clockwise spin. The cue ball hits the object ball dead on. During impact, the surface of the cue ball slides against the object ball with friction. This creates force, down in the picture that throws the object ball off its line a little. The force also imparts counterclockwise right spin to the object ball. Cut shots also create throw and spin transfer. Here the cue ball is moving to the right. This creates throw to the right and counterclockwise or right spin on the object ball. With a cut shot, the only time you don't get throw and spin transfer is if you use what is called gearing outside English. Here the cue ball rolls along the object ball during contact, as if the two balls were like two gears meshing together. There is no sliding force and therefore no throw or spin transfer. Now let's look at what happens when balls rebound off the rails. First, notice how the rail compresses when the ball hits. This creates a resisting force that decreases the rebound angle and imparts spin to the banking ball. When you use running or natural English, the rebound angle is increased or lengthened. When you use reverse English, the rebound angle is decreased or shortened. It is also interesting to look at how the rail affects a ball's top spin or bottom spin. With follows, some of the top spin is usually retained, which looks like bottom spin on the rebound. With draw, the backspin is usually lost, creating stun on the rebound. Also notice how the ball hops.
This is called a rail cut shot. The object ball is frozen to the rail. We wish to pocket it in this corner pocket. One technique that helps make this shot easier is to use left English. We're going to hit the left side of the cue ball. And we're going to hit the rail about 1/4 inch away from the object ball. When the cue ball hits the rail, it will compress it slightly, and the spin will throw the cue ball towards the object ball. So the left spin will throw it right towards the object ball and hopefully send it right down the rail. So again, I use left English. I'm hitting the ball to the left of center. In this case, the English is called running English because when it hits the rail, it tends to run down the rail. So you can see the object ball went straight up the rail. The cue ball headed pretty much directly across the table and back. Sometimes we want to change the direction the cue ball heads after making the ball to get good position on the next shot. So let's look at some high-speed video that shows different possibilities for doing that.
Here the cue ball hits the object ball first before the rail with right English, which is called outside English. The right English throws the object ball straight down the rail and causes the cue ball to bounce back some. Here's the classic example of hitting the rail first with running English. As you can see, the cue ball bounces straight across the table. To make the cue ball go even further down table, you need to hit the object ball while the cue ball is compressing the rail. That way, the running English will throw the object ball straight down the rail and lengthen the rebound as the English continues to interact with the rail. To get the most action off the rail, the cue ball needs to hit the object ball while first compressing the rail. This allows the English to take more as the ball rebounds. Let's take another quick look at all the cue ball paths possible. Now let's look at some break shots. Here's an 8-ball break where the balls are racked perfectly and the lead ball is hit squarely. Notice how the 8-ball stands in place and the rack flies away symmetrically. This is actually unusual for everything to spread so evenly. Your opponent won't always give you such a perfect rack, and you won't always hit it this well. Here's an alternative 8-ball break shot, where the cue ball is hit from the side rail, aiming at the second ball, not the lead ball. With a good rack, the 8-ball will almost always head towards the opposite side pocket. If you are playing on the rules that award a win for sinking the 8-ball in the break, this might be a good option to consider. Here's a typical 9-ball break, with a square and firm hit on the lead ball. Notice how the cue ball bounces back from the rack. This is why it is a good idea to have slight follow on the break shot, so the cue ball will slow down and move back towards the rack after impact, hopefully stopping near the center of the table. This provides the best chance for a decent shot after the break. Also notice how the cue ball hops off the lead ball. This is caused by the cue ball hitting the lead ball slightly above center. The topspin can also contribute to this. The hop isn't a problem unless you fail to hit the lead ball squarely. If you don't, the cue ball can go flying off the table. Here is a legally executed jump shot. The cue stick strikes down at about 45 degrees, aiming through the center or slightly below the center for best action. Notice how the cue ball compresses the table's cloth and bounces off the slate with a single hit of the cue stick. I want to close the billiards section with looking at how to detect and prevent a double hit, which is a foul. This topic can often cause arguments at the table, but with a little understanding, it's not that hard to figure out.
When the cue ball and object ball are close together, like this, you have to be careful to not double hit the cue ball. That's considered a foul and is not allowed. First, I'll demonstrate what that looks like. The cue ball stops in place, but because the cue stick follows through, it hits it a second time and drives it forward.
Notice how the cue ball does not hesitate whatsoever. This is how you can tell if it's a double hit. In super slow motion, it's obvious what's going on.
It's very easy to distinguish between a legal hit and an illegal double hit. With a legal hit, the cue ball does stop in place. Even with a follow shot, the cue ball still stops in place momentarily before following forward.
One way to prevent a double hit is to elevate the cue stick, striking down at the cue ball. Here you can see a legal hit. Here's an example double hit foul caused by the cue stick not being elevated enough. Notice again how the cue ball is driven forward without hesitation. Balloons popping, bursting, and bouncing are very interesting in super slow motion. Here, an air-filled balloon is popped with a small needle. Notice how the balloon totally collapses within about 1/1000th of a second. With a water balloon, the balloon still peels away quickly, but the water mostly stays in place, waiting for gravity to do its thing. Here's a long, skinny water balloon shot with a blow dart. This is a water balloon dropped onto a kitchen counter. I call him Mr. Bouncy. Mr. Bouncy can sometimes jump quite high. Oh no, Mr. Bouncy is dead. How about we break some stuff in super slow motion? First, let's break a glass bottle with a hammer. Sometimes the clips look even more cool in reverse. Now let's smash a stack of graham crackers. How about an ice cube? Have you ever dropped the jar on the floor by accident? How about detonating a firecracker in a bottle of beer? The firecracker is submerged with a waterproof fuse and is about to go off at the bottom of the bottle. Here's another beer bottle trick where you blow out the bottom by smacking on the top. Notice how the bubbles form at the bottom and then collapse to break the bottom out. Okay, it's time for a quiz. What you're looking at is a shaken pop can shot with a pellet gun. Which way is the pellet going, from right to left or from left to right? Watch it a few times and think about your answer. Left to right or right to left? People who know about gun ballistics usually guess right to left, because a bullet hit usually creates a small entry wound and a large exit wound. Is that the right answer here? The correct answer is actually left to right. When the pellet punctures the left side of the can, the pressurized liquid inside ruptures the aluminum and much of the pop shoots out. By the time the pellet reaches the right surface, most of the pressure is gone, and the pellet just makes a small puncture hole in the aluminum. Did you get the right answer? If so, gold star. Have you ever tried to stand on an empty aluminum can and have somebody tap it with a finger to have it collapse? It's not always so easy to do. Sometimes the can goes flying out. The finger tapper person has to be fast to get their hand out of the way. And sometimes the can just collapses all by itself. Have you ever wondered what it would look like if you fired a 2x4 at 160 miles per hour into a multi-layer solid wood wall?
Clear. Okay, clear.
From the side, you can see that the 2x4 penetrates into the solid wood wall almost 4 inches. One thing engineers use high-speed cameras for is to visualize motion and vibration of high-speed machinery. Let's look at valve springs in a small internal combustion engine. When a car or lawnmower engine turns, a camshaft pushes on rods to open and close valves very quickly. One valve lets air and fuel into a piston cylinder so it can be ignited with a spark plug. The other valve lets the exhaust out after the gas burns and expands. The valves are kept closed with springs. After a cam pushes a valve up, the spring provides restoring force to close the valve. This all happens very quickly, even hundreds of times a second. The high-speed camera helps us visualize the performance of the engine as the speed increases. Here's a close-up of the piston and valves, which will help us see the 4 strokes of the engine. During the intake stroke, air and fuel enters the cylinder through the intake valve as the piston moves down. During the compression stroke, the mixture is compressed as the piston moves up. The spark plug, not shown, fires at the end of the compression stroke. During the power stroke, the mixture burns and expands, pushing the piston down, providing power to the engine. Finally, during the exhaust stroke, the burn gases exit the exhaust valve as the piston moves back up again. This process continues as long as the engine is running. Now you know how the 4-stroke internal combustion engine in your car works. When you run an engine too fast, bad things start happening. First, you get what is called spring surge, where vibrations start traveling up and down the valve springs. When the speed is increased further, you eventually get what is called valve float, where the springs no longer provide proper force to keep the valve lifters running smoothly on the camshaft. This is bad because it can cause wear and reduce engine performance. Guitar strings vibrate too, but here the vibration is good. You ever wonder where and how a computer stores all of those documents, pictures, and music files?
This is a hard drive from a computer. It stores all the information in your computer on a magnetic metal disc. So this disc spins around, and this little arm is called the read-write head. It actually reads and writes information magnetically on the disc as it spins. Now this arm has to be moved very accurately and quickly to quickly access information at different spots on the disk. In real life, as the computer is reading information from, say, here and here very quickly, this arm actually moves so fast that it looks like a total blur. So we use the high-speed video camera to visualize that it in fact does lock onto a track and stop before it moves to the other, at which it locks on and stops again, reading the information as it travels by.
This is what the hard disk looks like at regular speed as the read-write head locks onto and moves between two extreme tracks. Filmed with a high-speed camera, you can see that the arm does in fact come to a complete stop at each position before moving to the next. Isn't that amazing? Now let's look at some fun toys and the amazing physics that make them work.
This toy is called Newton's pendulum. It illustrates the principles of conservation of energy and conservation of momentum. When you pull one ball back and release it, magically one ball bounces off the other side, and then the process continues.
Conservation of momentum requires that the sum of the speeds in equals the sum of the speeds out. Here, one ball is leaving at the same speed as the one ball coming in, so 1 equals 1. Conservation of energy requires that the sum of the squares of the speeds in equals the sum of the squares of the speeds out. That works too, because 1 squared is also equal to 1 squared. You might think both principles could be satisfied if two balls were to leave at half the speed each. That would satisfy momentum because 1 would equal 1/2 plus 1/2. But energy would not add up, because 1 squared is not equal to 1/2 squared plus 1/2 squared. So the laws of physics don't let it happen. If one ball comes in, one and only one must go out.
If you pull back two balls, again, two balls will leave the other side, and then the process will continue. We can even pull back three balls. And even though we only have two hanging right now, three will leave on the other side. This toy is called Newton's amplifier. It consists of all these balls that can move relative to this post. When you drop the post, the largest ball at the bottom tries to bounce off the surface. That transfers momentum to this ball as it's falling, and so on, all the way up the chain. And ideally, most of the momentum from all these balls would transfer to this top ball, making it fly off the post at a fairly large speed. So let's see in action, dropping it from a fairly small height so we can still see the top ball leave. If we drop it from a little bit higher height, top ball will gain a lot more speed. This toy is called a gyro hoop. It consists of a large metal hoop and 5 metal donuts, which rotate and wobble on this loop as it turns. And if you keep the loop turning while these donuts rotate, you can maintain their motion indefinitely. And the high-speed video will let us see up close what's actually going on with these donuts to make them do what they do. So let's see how it works. You spin them, and as you rotate the hoop through the donuts, they maintain their spin and wobble. This is a tipsy top. It's a fun little toy that illustrates various principles of physics. When you spin the top in one direction, I'm going to spin it clockwise. The top will actually flip itself upside down and reverse the direction of its spin, so it will appear to be turning clockwise from above. If it had kept its original spin, clockwise, and flipped upside down, it would appear to be turning counterclockwise instead. Another thing to note is how far the center of gravity rises up during this flipping. Right now the center of gravity is quite low, but when this thing flips upside down, the center of gravity is quite high. So it's interesting to note how the kinetic energy of motion translates into potential energy represented by the height of the head of the top. So I spun it clockwise, and it still appears to be turning clockwise. So the direction of spin must have reversed itself.
Here you can see the top go airborne as it flips itself onto the peg. You can also clearly see the clockwise spin. I think everybody that's ever had a high-speed camera has done this experiment. Have you ever seen popcorn pop in super slow motion? Jello is lots of fun in super slow motion. Here's a piece of Jello wiggling on a plate. Watch this cube of Jello as it falls onto a kitchen counter. It flattens out to a paper-thin square, peels itself off the surface, launches back into the air again, returning to the cube shape. Only a little piece broke off and went its merry way. It looks like outer space physics, but I assure you it's just in my kitchen. Ever wonder what would happen to a serving of Jello if it got shot by a BB gun? Well, here it is. Before we begin here, I want to assure you that no animals were hurt during the filming of these clips. I can't say the same for the stupid human tricks in the next section. This is a miller moth temporarily confined inside a drinking glass. Miller moths appear in large quantities every few years in Colorado as they fly from the plains to the mountains to lay their eggs. During the season, you find them in every nook and cranny around the house. And at night when you have lights on, they swarm around the lights thinking they have found the moon by which they can navigate. The glass surface is understandably a little confusing to the moth, especially after taking a head plant. At regular speeds, their flight looks quite awkward, very fluttery. However, look how beautiful the flight appears in slow motion. It almost looks like a soaring eagle. It looks like the moth's wing gets irreparably crushed during this fall, but no problem. Isn't nature amazing with its awesome design and resilience? I wish engineers could design stuff as reliable and durable as Mother Nature's creations. These next clips are a tribute to my faithful dog, Girl, who passed away a couple of years ago. She was dear to my heart, and she was always an eager participant in my high-speed video experiments, especially when bones were involved. One of my favorite tricks to do with her involved balancing a bone on her nose. She would sit there entirely still, with her eyes on the bone, until I told her, "Okay." Then in a flash, she would swipe her head around and grab the bone before gravity could lower it even a bit. Often the bone would sit motionless and undisturbed until it landed in her mouth. I guess she was a little camera shy because every time I filmed her, she disturbed the bone a little as she moved her snout around. On second thought, maybe she was smarter than I thought, and kept eluding perfection, so I would do more and more takes. You see, she got a bone each time. Anyway, her performance is still impressive. Watch her eyes stay fixed on the bone even as it enters her mouth. This is a good instructional video for many developing athletes out there who need to better learn to keep their eyes on the ball. Good girl. Girl, like most dogs, loved peanut butter. If you wiped some on the roof of her mouth, she would sit there flinging her tongue for minutes, savoring the flavor. If you thought stupid animal tricks were funny, just wait and see how silly and stupid humans can be. It amazes me how easy it is to convince people to serve as innocent subjects when they're excited by the technology and some of the clips I show them. First, let's start with some silly mouth motions. Okay, now let's get a little rough.
Ow, ow, ow.
Now take it back. Now let's do some human flesh ballistic studies.
Ow, ow.
Okay, Joe, you promise your aim is good and you can hit me in the center of the target where it won't hurt so much, right? No problem, Tom. Okay, Joe, fire away. Okay, Tom, here it comes.
Ow, ow, ow.
In the last two clips, if you're wondering why the dedicated subjects didn't seem to flinch when the impact pain was inflicted, it is because it takes time for a silly human to respond. The nerve impulses representing pain must first travel to the brain, then the brain must process the signals and decide that pain is involved, then nerve impulses must be sent to muscles to cause the flinch. This all takes an eternity in the world of high-speed video. The ballistic action and the camera are much faster than human response. And to answer the question, yes, the paintball did hurt. In fact, it left a nice little welt. Have you ever tried to drink an entire gallon of milk within 20 to 30 seconds? Well, the human stomach doesn't seem to like this very much. Look at what happens. Let's see that again.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the wonderful world of high-speed video. I hope it has helped you look at and appreciate the world in a different way. I have many more clips available on my high-speed video website, and I will continue to post clips there over the years, so please stay tuned. The website is at www.engrr.colostate.edu/HSV. If you like and want to learn more about billiards material, I have a lot of information on the website for that as well. The address is www.engrr.colostate.edu/pool. There you can find lots of video demonstrations, instructional articles, information about my book, plus hundreds and hundreds of high-speed video clips showing different types of pool shots. In closing, I'd like to thank some of the students that have helped me come up with creative ideas for filming using the high-speed camera. For example, I would have never thought about drinking an entire gallon of milk to induce vomiting. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks again for watching.